Okay, welcome everyone to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio, KUDEN Podcast. Pick a name, any name. Well, no, don't pick any name. Anyway, all right. So, let's see, we've got some folks still filtering in and whatnot. All right. So this week we're going to take a look at actually a first part to a 3-part packet of lessons pretty much around the same topic, right? And that would be focusing primarily on the Togakure ryu, and then we'll take a look at how these things branch out. Some way more in the way of ninjutsu than maybe others. Okay, so I think I have this in the right order. For this episode, we're going to take a look at one of these core principles within the Togakure ryu that is also seen in virtually all the other ones. I think all the other ones, where we're not fighting head-to-head, toe-to-toe kind of thing, right? Which really throws a lot of people off. I'll talk about that more here in a bit. And then I'll also introduce parts 2 and 3. Maybe that'll entice you to sign in every week if it's a first time view for you or listen in. And if not, hopefully we can at least plant some seeds and clear up some misunderstandings and I don't know, it's a good professional term, bullshit that's been circulating for a while, where people make up their own shit and call it Ninjutsu. All right, so that being said, I will talk to everybody again as soon as we get started. Question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio, real training for real people in a real world. All right, that being said, it's getting colder outside. Gotta have something warm here. Although you'll see me switch to something cold later. Anyway, sporting my, just joking with James here earlier, my Bujinkan Taikai t-shirt from the, where the hell were we? Was that DC? I think so. What's the date on this thing? It was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, I'm old. Anyway, so welcome to another episode. This is episode 236, I think. James, should we do something for 250 or should we wait until 300? I mean, we'd had a big celebration for 200. Anyway, James is hiding in the background. Maybe he can't hear me. Anyway, as if you were on when I did the pre-intro, I don't know what the hell these things are called. Anyway, kind of led in with the fact that this episode is kind of a part of a packet, right? So think about the way some of the scrolls are laid out from some of the lineages, like in the Kotoryu, right? In Kotoryu, even though it's very, very related to Gyoko first level scroll, and please don't confuse first level with beginner. Nothing drives me more crazy than people often, and I'm guilty of this way back in the day as well, but hopefully I can be what other teachers were for me or other mentors were for me to you, where we can clear up some of these things. And that's what the general gist of these 3 packets is, but often a big confusion for folks, right, is in confusing or in thinking about the Joryaku no Maki, the Shora no Maki, Gyokoryu, Kotoryu kind of thing as, well, that's beginner stuff. No, that's, you could call it the introductory, foundational, or whatever. Yeah, beginner. No. Okay. Joel, that kanji, Joel, in Joryaku, in the Gyokoryu, same kanji as the Sho and Shoden. Yeah, so you're not,
looking at beginner, right? It's high level. The Jo, like in Jodan no Kamae, right? Or Dai Jodan no Kamae, staff, sword, that kind of thing. So it's high level. Chudan, I'm sorry, is middle transmission. And then Okuden, you have these different translations, right? But in the Gyokoryu, it's Jodyaku, Chudyaku, Geiryaku, right? If this is beginner, then Geiryaku is called low or lowest transmission. Okay? Again, I've covered this along the way, maybe for another lesson or whatever. But we got to be careful that we're not just taking a direct translation and then trying to run that through a filter from our culture or how we would see that particular word order or particular translation or definition or whatever, because it can really throw us off, right? Really throw us off, right? So anyway, for the next 3 episodes, I want to go through some misunderstandings, right? On a very, very big level. And you'll see how I'll make references to parts 2 and 3 just very briefly as we go through this. I've got my outline laid out, so I'm going to stick to things. But there are some misunderstandings. Again, I think it's because folks are either running things through a predefined filter, like this episode. I'll talk about that in a minute. Or they're confusing two things that are related, that are connected, and they're relating to them like they're the same. And even if they, understand that they're connected, they're missing the mark on how, right? And again, you had to have gone through this art, right, for decades, because of the way Hatsumi Sensei released things, right? We have pockets of information that literally took us through the Shuhari model, even though people got distracted by, we're doing spear and short sword during this one, and we're doing whatever, right? And so there was a method to the madness, so to speak, right? And it's important that we have these, right? That's the job of Shidoshi. That's a job of even a Shihan, right? Sensei for decades has been saying, long before his retirement, right, way back in Hombu Dojo, or even at Taikai, if he's doing these things around the world, that if you're new to this, or you're under a certain level, or you don't understand what I'm doing, you need to get with a Shidoshi minimum who can help you to develop those skills that are going to be necessary for you to understand what it is that I'm doing. I found that to be problematic, not because he said it, not because his instructions were off, but because I'm not sure how many Shidoshi actually heard that and followed through on it, right? With what should be taught at different levels, and the focus, so that students understand. So when they get to get to being able to understand what Hatsumi Sensei is doing, not see it and give it their best shot at duplicating it, but understanding it. And one of the big things that we need to understand is that nothing in Ninjutsu is what it looks like. So watching Hatsumi Sensei or any master teacher demonstrate something is already problematic, because we're not going to see most of it. And if we don't know the core pieces, we're not even going to know what to look for to see what it is. Okay? So even for us, it's invisible. Okay? So that's why we have to develop Hanya in Japanese, prajna in Sanskrit, right? This insight necessary for enlightenment to take place. It's a level of wisdom where it's not the step-by-step that it looks like. Okay. James, were you on when I did that very first online training program way back in, I don't know, what was it, 2008, something like that? It might even be before that. I think I didn't. All I did was doing the seminars before that. I did the Ninja no Hachimon. That was the first release on that one. And then after that, at the end of that, I just kind of left the door open for folks that, look, if you want to continue this this way, then we can do that. Were you around then?
Yes.
Okay. So first couple of lessons, I think what I did, we did our best attempt. The technology's hopefully caught up now, but I couldn't exactly play it on my screen and then have it show up on other people's screens because we'd have all that jumping around and bandwidth and weird up and down load kind of stuff. So I just, people had their training videos. And so I would say this particular video, right, load it up. So we're going to, and I want you to hit play, give you a minute here. I want you to watch it from, let's say, 2 minutes, 37 seconds to 2 minutes, 55, whatever. You remember that, right? Okay. And I would say, what do you see? And people would point out the obvious, like you're stepping back with this leg and you're doing Nuke Nagashi over here. And yeah, okay. And then I remember a couple of times choosing, right, certain students and saying, you have any questions? No, it looks pretty cut and dry. Okay, great. Why is my rear arm right there at that moment? Okay. Why is my angle what it is? So it's easy to see the step-by-step, but angling, timing, relative positioning for this or that, it's very different, right? And it wasn't to blow holes in anybody's beliefs about what they were seeing, because what they can see is what they can see. The problem is that we need the teacher's job is to lead you into what you can't see. And herein lies that crux, right? So in this episode, I'm going to be diving into this idea of never facing off with or meeting the attacker head on, right? Nose to nose, toe to toe, let's do our thing. That is a virtual no-no in the Togakure school, right? And this runs, there's examples of it through all of the lineages, right? We'll talk about, hopefully, I've got references for most, if not all. I don't know if we're going to get through all of them, but I want to make sure that everybody gets this, okay? Because ever since this art hit the shores of the US, the UK, whatever, the biggest challenge, right? And we all went through it, right? The biggest challenge the teachers have is getting students to understand what they're looking at, not what they think they're looking at based on a certain lens or a certain filter that they're running it through. Right? And by and large, most of us came to this art from other systems, self-defense, martial arts, street fighting, whatever, where it was pretty much based on boxing or that direct Budo confrontational kind of thing, right? I'll talk about that Budo thing in here in a minute. And that's not ninjutsu. It's not that a ninja would never do a head-to-head, toe-to-toe, but there's very strategic reasons for the exceptions to the rule. Very, very strategic reasons, okay? It's not like we're just going to throw everything to the wind and I'm going to fight like him today, okay? I don't know, maybe that question will pop up later as to why that might be, but for the moment, we'll just leave it at this. The hardest part, right, is to not translate this through lenses or filters from other shit that we've done. Okay, not that stuff is shit, right? It's just a very different way of approaching things. It's the conventional way of approaching things, and that's all fine. But that's not what ninjutsu is based on. It's not. This is not just a good idea. This is the core premise, right? Never meeting. And when I say never, there's always an exception or three, but this is a core tenet. This is a core piece, right? And so that's what I want to take a look at today. But then this is going to lead to a need, right, on the student's part, whether they think so or not, to understand the difference between Budo Taijutsu and Ninpo Taijutsu. These things are often used interchangeably. Right? You'll hear me use the term Ninpo Taijutsu way more often than Budo Taijutsu. We have a couple of programs at the academy. And now if you're in my online programs, well, you're doing Ninpo Taijutsu whether you want to or not. Because that's based on the highest level programs that I have in my school, which is pure ninjutsu, right? Those are students who want to learn it the way I learned it, and to the depth, breadth, and degree to which I learned it, right? They just want to learn Budo Taijutsu or whatever. That's fine. You can do that, kind of, right? What you'll have to do is ignore a whole bunch of things that I say about hiding things and whatever. But that'll pop up at least once as I'm going through my outline for this episode. But because of the depth and the importance of that is actually the focus of next episode. Okay. And then both of these together are going to kind of create a feedback loop, right? When we're looking at how this would be applied, right? I'll talk a little bit about how these things are applied in the modern world, not a little bit, a lot of bit, about how these things are applied in the modern world in each episode. But I almost said episode 3, the third part of this, right? So what's that going to be? Episode 239? Is that right? Is that where we are? 239? Okay. So we're going to take a look at the hierarchy or the different types of ninja in a clan and how these things would manifest, how they would use them. Okay. Because again, it's important. The third episode, right? Or the third part of this. I keep reiterating this thing and pointing out that there's different types of ninja in each clan, and they all function differently, right? They had different roles, which means they needed different skills, right? So how do they apply this stuff, right? For some folks, up to a certain age, up to a certain point, but there's also natural proclivities and things like that. They can pick and choose, and they're going to be naturally suited toward one type or not. And I can absolutely understand how most people are attracted to the art based on the gaining, right? The low level, the low man, right? That's gaining, low man. They were the field operatives, right? They got all the cool toys, whatever, right? Climbing castle walls. They make for good movies, right? Way more so than the chunin or the jonin, because it becomes harder and harder to see ninjutsu the way most people translate it, the way most people filter it, right? Based on the way they've been exposed to it, right? We always have to worry about something called anchoring bias, right? Anchoring bias is everything gets judged or weighed or compared value-wise, good, bad, best, better, shit, whatever, based on the first thing that we encountered. So if you encountered Enter the Ninja as your first exposure to ninjutsu, then it's going to be all genjutsu. And even if it wasn't that, if it was one of these modern ninja ones, if your encounter was to one of the Chinese knockoffs, that's going to be in a different direction, right? So again, these things are going to kind of loop around, but I need to start with this perspective. And this isn't all about fighting. Okay? This is all so about clarity and understanding what it is that anybody that says that they're trying to learn ninjutsu, it's kind of like the Ninja no Hachimon, right? Those minimum 8 gates of training. They're there's no, what would you say? There's no leeway there, right? You either need to know them or you don't. Okay. Now the modern version is going to look different from the ancient version because the technology is different. But that doesn't mean that people can just make up their shit or make up whatever, right? And that's, again, as we dive into this one and the other ones as well, this has been a big problem, right? Everyone, not everyone, but a lot, right, have looked at Ninjutsu and they're trying to get the techniques, and you can see it where they mix in other things to make it look like, right, other conventional martial arts. They'll be in Seigan bouncing up and down on their feet and whatnot, or they think that being in a certain position or whatever isn't fast enough for the modern fighter. One of my teachers, Shoshi Malmström, was in Japan one time, and again, I'm getting this secondhand, but he was walking home with one of the then Shidoshi, now I think it's okay, walking home after a class or walking to the train station or whatever they were going, having this conversation, and he said, I don't think that the stuff is suited for today's stuff without modification. And the Japanese teacher said, oh, really? Is that what you think? He goes, yeah, just and it kind of names these things off: hook punches, uppercuts, jabs, those kind of things. And teacher, so you think it needs to be modified? Yes. I think you need more study and practice. Right? And then after much more study and practice, that faded away, right? Until at a certain point, I remember being in a black belt training in, what was I, White Plains, New York, I think, at a friend's dojo. And apparently there were some folks that looked like they were mixing in boxing and who knows, right? Just either overt or subtle little nuances that it was obvious that they were changing it. And we're like not even mid-morning on the first day of a 2-day seminar. And he stops everybody. And the look in his face, right? James knows. I mean, if you guys have read his book, Warriorship, right? And he self-identifies as a, Texas-born, Georgian-raised, 145 pounds of romping, stomping, hillbilly hell. Mix that with a former Marine mentality. And, anyway, so he just had this fire in his eyes. And he said, if you do not believe that this stuff will work against a modern attacker with the problems we have to solve without mixing in boxing, taekwondo, whatever, he named a bunch of things. He just looks, he points over now, based on where I was facing him at the front of the room, the door, entrance, exit was behind us. So he's pointing over everybody's heads and he goes, there's the goddamn door. Right. So he went from, I don't think this stuff needs to be, to asking different questions, looking at it differently, without changing it. Right. We're talking about, right, but nobody throws a ski. You're right. On purpose. But if you move correctly and you know how to do proper taisabaki against that incoming hook punch, based on the arc that this guy is throwing, by the time it gets to you, it looks just like a ski because you've stretched him out and he had to chase you to hit the target and you're at the right angle and he's all bladed and stretched. He's not in the position that he wants to be in, right? That's not his job. The attacker on the street is not the uke. The attacker on the street, his job is to beat your ass because that's what his original intent is. Okay? It's what he might not use those words, but that's what it is. Okay. What's Yuke's job? Yuke's job is to help you, to help you learn the defender side of the technique, and 2, to receive the technique. Well, first to practice doing a proper attack and that kind of thing, but to learn the effect that a properly delivered technique has on the human body, because that's an invisible part that you can't see. It's not written into documents anywhere, whatever, right? So he needs to learn that. He needs to learn that so he knows what he's doing to a real attacker's body, so that 1, he knows whether a technique is working or not. 2, he can apply a technique based on proper use of force. That's really important in the modern world. Right? You exceed you go beyond the legal definition of use of force, which is pretty. I mean, the words are different, but the meaning and intent across at least all of our 50 states is the same, right? I can't speak for any other country, but that's there, right? So it's to understand what that technique is doing in a way to debilitate or to deter or to destroy this person's body, right? So what level, right? Because that use of force kind of thing is going to be really important. And especially if you're in law enforcement, professional security, military depending, right? I mean, when I was in the military, as a military cop, I had the same use of force things that every other civilian cop has. But as a soldier on the battlefield, well, that's a different realm. Okay? So really important stuff. But again, we've got to get this thing under control. So what I want to do during this episode, and I'll go through some more formalized goals here in a minute, is to really examine this core tenet, right, in Ninjutsu, why it's there, right? The strategic thinking behind it, right? Why the Togakure school would have this as like a core piece, right? And a couple of other factors. We'll take a look at these things as we go along, right? But these things are just really, really, really important. And since this is KUDEN, and I think people every once in a while get all personal development out because, right, they're already, look, Sensei, I'm already enlightened. I already have my shit together. I glow, right? My life is perfect. Everything is good. So can we not talk about the personal development stuff anymore? Can we steer away from Seishin Teki? Sure, we can do that. Okay. Oh, wait, not completely, because that has to do with clarity, right? And we are either going to allow ourselves to be deluded and follow that path so that everything that we try to process with that, does View and Miko, right? You know what I'm talking about. Everything we process with that is going to be flawed by nature. Okay. You know, ignorance begets volition, which means action. Action begets consciousness, that kind of stuff, right? So it's just going to be askew, right? So the more clear we are, then the more correct. And I don't mean by some subjective thing that that's right and that's wrong. More correct and in tune with ultimate truth and natural processes and natural law and whatnot, right? That the closer we're going to be to that. Okay. Anyway, I talked a little bit longer than I probably should have. So let's. Who's on, James? I've seen numbers go up. I've seen numbers go down.
Trinity's on. Said hi.
Awesome. That's my daughter, for anybody that doesn't know. And I'm going to throw this out. Trinity been getting lots of not accolades. People have been mentioning your presentation from fall camp in a way good way. So like, don't lean into that other side of yourself. So, but like really like, and a couple of folks that I didn't think that was their thing, but you got them. So cool. Anyway, what else we got? James is on. Hey, James. Hi, James.
Nope. And Candyman 12 checked in from over at YouTube.
Awesome. Becoming a regular.
But, that's it that's checked in so far.
Well, fine. I want to talk to them anyway. All right, cool beans. Okay, so let me pull up my outline here so I don't miss anything. Wrong one. That's the weekly schedule. Let's see. You guys should end up seeing this. There you go. You can still see me, right, James?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. All right. So again, just to kind of reiterate for anybody jumping on late, or I don't know, were scrolling on your phone and only caught every fifth word that I said originally, right? My goal during this episode is to have a discussion, kind of present, right, this thing about the Togakure Ryu's understanding that it's not always a good idea, nor advisable, or even preferred, right, especially within the school, to meet the opponent head on in a conventional engagement, the way most people think about fighting, right? And you can always tell because they're talking about, how beefed up and jacked you are muscle wise, or how you couldn't last 1 or 2 or whatever 2-minute, 5-minute rounds or whatever, right? The Togakure is not about that, not even close, right? And in the modern world, plenty of statistics that bear this stuff out, right? The average self-defense situation is over in 2 to 10 seconds. Even active shooter situations are over in less than 10 minutes, but they're not constant going at it kind of things with a couple of little, breaks in the corner with a sip of water that you're going to spit out anyway, and a breather. Okay. It's just not the same. Okay. So, what I really want to do during this one is to explore, again, this general or underlying principle. And I also hopefully will be able to show you some examples, or at least explain some examples of how this shows up within the techniques or within the tactics, the skills, those kind of things, right? From the school. Okay. And then I also want to branch that out to show how this principle shows up within many of the other 8 schools within the Bujinkan. And again, when I say schools within the Bujinkan, I'm always talking about the schools that Hatsumi Sensei had soke-ship of. Okay. People either want to jump over the other thing, or they're so fixated on these 8 because they're playing stamp collector or whatever, or their teachers didn't do their job and explain things much more deeply. And I'm not knocking teachers, and I'm not knocking students. We get that every once in a while, right, James? Somebody will go, I get it. Students are stupid. No, I'm pointing out a certain mindset. And if this was covered, great. If it wasn't, well, then somebody either didn't know and didn't get it from their teacher, or as a teacher, they have chosen to focus on fight techniques or whatever, and they're missing certain pieces that a student really needs to get things right. And this is important. This is the difference between, let's say, somebody knows how to fight, so they're going to teach somebody else how to fight, right? Or they're teaching self-defense classes, and a martial arts tradition or lineage. And that is that it's not only the soke's responsibility for transmitting and passing on the lineage. Okay. It's every teacher's job, and to pass it on. Our job is to pass it on as correctly and completely as possible, because we're passing it to the next generation, or we're passing it to somebody else who could be a conduit to the next generation. Okay. I've never seen being an instructor or being a teacher, or even like in Mikyo, being a initiated lay teacher, as being some kind of badge of honor. I think it's a heavy responsibility. Reverend Jikai, my Mikyo teacher, kind of expressed it this way too. Right? It's huge responsibility. Give the wrong student the wrong techniques, they're going to go and abuse them. Give the right student the wrong stuff at the wrong, or even the right stuff at the wrong time, they're going to be confused and they may quit. But give students half at best, and they're going to think that they got everything and they're going to pass that on. And if they only pass on half to 75%, and then the next student who becomes a teacher only passes on half of what they got or 75% of what they got, pretty soon you got people making shit up to fill in the other 80-90%. Okay, you got to be careful. And yes, I said that we have to be careful. Normal, there's a lot of things that I go, look, you can do whatever you want, but if you're teaching, I don't care if it's a training group, then one, teach what you know well. Don't teach stuff that you're still working on yourself. You have no business doing that until you figure it out. Okay. And three, make sure that you're passing on things completely, right? You're still studying. I have I need to get a bunch of these things back up. I used to have this thing that hung up. We have it in the dojo. We have a master's creed. We have a student creed, vows of intention, warrior's code of action, that kind of thing. But we also have a master's creed. Very, very simple. Originally, I wrote it for me as a reminder to me. But now that I have, several Shidoshi running around the place and they're teaching, and it applies, right? So it just became standardized. That master's creed says, the day I stop being a student is the day I'm no longer qualified to be a teacher. Right? And I know people would argue that, but there's still work to be done. I mean, you can take a lifetime focusing on one of these 9 lineages and still not learn it all. So how the hell can you stop training or stop learning? Well, we know how, right? Ego takes over. Okay? So anyway, let's see. So a lot of this, and the reason I put this thing together is based on my own training and understanding, right? Even if we just look at this from the perspective of Kyujutsu Tenkan Ho, right? This disguising truth and falsehood, right? This playing back and forth. Kyujutsu is very important in Mikyo, and that underlines everything in Ninjutsu anyway. But it's Kyujutsu is a kind of it's almost like a yin yang kind of word, right? Often you in simplified dictionaries, you might see it defined as truth, right? But kyo can be teaching, it can be truth, that kind of thing, right? Jitsu, and this is where like I grind my molars when people call this art ninjutsu. I know what it sounds like to an untuned Western ear. The word is ninjutsu, and I know that clipped U, ninjutsu, right? That clipped U can sound like an I, especially when a Japanese person is just rattling the stuff off. Okay? But it's a linguistic thing, because the kanji for jutsu, for ninjutsu, means art, system, path, methodology, those kind of things, right? Jitsu, see kyojitsu here, right? Jitsu is a trick, right? So in this context, what we're really looking at is this idea of being able to tell the difference, right? In Mikyo, if we talk about kyojitsu, we're talking about being able to discern truth from lies, or reality from falsehoods or deception or whatever. Okay, Tenkan is juxtapositioning it, it's flipping it, switching it, right? And so that's the method. The method, whole means method or way, that kind of thing that we're using, because what we're doing is weaving a story or painting a picture for the opponent, for the aggressor, for the attacker. And again, this could be somebody on the street, could be office politics, whatever. Right? The thing that we're doing, one, has to fit their worldview of themselves, the world itself, others, the connection between at least two of these things, if not all of them. Because if it doesn't, then they're not going to buy it, right? That's where people look at you and it's all suspicious, or to them it doesn't make sense or whatever. Okay, so we're painting a picture, we're creating a story that they're willing to buy, right? Because we can control their perceptions, their view, their beliefs about what's going on, what I'm all about, what my fight style is, all that kind of stuff. That controls everything else, right? It will control their intent. It'll control their plans. It'll control if they're talking smack. It'll control what they say about me, but mostly the plans and then their actions as they execute on those things, because they're gonna base it on what they see, right? So either way, right? So even if we just look at this from this perspective, right? This Kyojutsu Tenkan Ho, and the lesson and ideal. Okay, that in Ninjutsu, nothing is ever what it looks like. And this is the litmus test between telling the difference between Budo Taijutsu and Ninpo Taijutsu on one level. Right? Again, that's for another episode. I think next week. I think it's part 2. And since all of the other 8 lineages merged with Togakure, right? And 2 other Ryuha, right? There's 3 ninja lineages within the Bujinkan schools, but they all merged, right? And each of the Ninjutsu lineages, right? They're not all teaching the same thing. Their focus wasn't even the same thing. We'll go into some of that a little bit here as we go along. Since they all merged, I guess it would be the other 5 merged with these 3 Ninjutsu lineages, right? Then each of these quite naturally would have taken on this core aspect as a minimum from the Ninjutsu perspective, even if they didn't have it in the beginning before the merger took place. Okay. And again, one of the I talked about having to get some of these things back up in the dojo, Master's Creed, some other artwork that we have and whatnot. But I have this huge, it's almost a floor to ceiling map. It's a lineage that some friends, way more historian than me, put this thing together, that from the point where it enters Japan from China, and then it breaks out, this singular body of knowledge breaks out, goes down through history and starts interacting and combining until we end up having 3 teachers, right? Takamasa says 3 teachers passing these 9 schools, right? Each one had different ones. These 9 schools to him, and then him passing on 9 to Hatsumi Sensei. And again, everybody believed that Hatsumi Sensei was going to do the same thing with them, but what he did was he broke them apart again. Okay? It's almost like a cleansing. So anyway, there's going to be this natural thing, right? So I want to really focus on this idea, right? This unconventional way of approaching self-defense, quote unquote, fighting and survival through this lens, because we can still be doing everything in the Bujinkan. Well, not everything. We can be doing what we do in the Bujinkan, but if the lens is on the conventional way of doing things, Budo. Okay? And next episode, I'm going to go into all this as to why certain things happened, why we call things a certain way. Before that, we did not, and how these things kind of affected, and why Hatsumi Sensei put things into place. It's way deeper than most people think. And unless you're a personal student or whatever, or dojo or seminars or anything like that, I haven't gone into the depth and the multiple reasons why Hatsumi Sensei made this switch and this change and whatnot, in this kind of a format anyway, ever. So that we'll do that next time. But again, I really want to take a look at this idea that if we're focusing on ninjutsu, we have to understand that it's not a different style. It's not doing what everybody else is doing with a twist, which is what styles are, right? It's not the same. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. Right? Well, I do. I'll share it as I go along. So very, very quickly, here are my 3 goals for this episode. Okay, and again, we're going to fly through this stuff. So, I want to highlight the value, right? The benefit of indirect engagement, right? Not fighting toe to toe, nose to nose, that kind of thing, right? In modern context, especially in modern context, whether again in law enforcement, whether in personal safety, or even day-to-day conflict resolution, which most often in today's world has nothing to do with fistfights. Okay. 2, I want to bridge the gap between theory and practice. Okay. We can read things in the history books, we can study, we can research, we can read Hatsumi Sensei's books or whatever, but until the rubber meets the road and it's actually put into practice to the point where it goes from something that we do to being so much a part of who we are that we can't not do it, then it's still theory, right? So what I want to do is take a look at how these ancient principles still remain vital, valuable, and valid in today's world. Right? Because unless you're doing this as a cultural exercise, or you're like some of these, I don't even know if they exist anymore. There used to be Facebook pages that were wrapped around ninjutsu, but these guys were the equivalent of the SCA, if you know what that is, the Society for Creative Anachronism. That's the guys that dress up in medieval armor with padded weapons, and then they beat the shit out of it. Well, they try to do it. It just, to me, it looks like 6-year-olds in a sandbox, except they're all dressed up in armor and whatever. Some people get very elaborate. Other people, they've got Native American moccasins and whatever. But it's role playing. It's like D&D, but you actually get to smack the other person. Okay. Again, there were these Facebook groups, and the information was shared back and forth. Was these guys were making Mizugumi, the water striders that ninja would cross marshes with, not ponds or lakes. Right, which was really funny when Mythbusters made them, and I don't know if anybody saw that episode, but they filled a pool with water and then eventually just had to dump a shit ton of cornstarch into it to basically turn it into really thick jello, for it to even kind of make sense. But the premise at the very beginning was off. So the entire freaking show is they're following a rabbit down a hole. That's not where a rabbit would go. Right. So, but they were making stuff like that. They were making Shinobi Suzoku, all kinds of stuff. Right. It was And then they were out training with the stuff and practicing. And I'm not saying it's not useful, but that's not, it's not for those who are self-defense, personal development, protecting your family, using these in today's world for the purposes that it was designed, right? Anyway, and then the third goal that I have is hopefully to inspire at least one of you to think beyond conventional responses. Okay, what I mean by that is I really hope that by the end of this, some folks are going to be encouraged to spend more time focusing on adaptability and deeper strategic awareness as opposed to how do I punch harder? If you understand that your job is to match, even if we're doing, fist, we'll call it fist fighting or whatever. Your job is to learn how to match the weapon, the fist, with a Kyusho, with a weak point on the body, so you can do less to produce more. Because as long as we're just trading shots and training like we're point fighters, well, I tagged you, so therefore, bullshit. Okay? So one of the reasons why way back in the day, we used to chalk up our training knives, right? We'd take either stuff that was used for billiards or soft, like sidewalk chalk kind of thing, and we just run the edge along this thing, almost like we were sharpening it. So we just ended up with a line of chalk on it, and then we would train, right? And then what we were looking at was, just because you got tagged doesn't mean that was all that effective, right? So what we were looking for was a straight line across, like a viable target. There's a straight line here. Yeah, you cut muscle, and yes, I'm leaking, but that's not a debilitating thing, right? But if we had a single dot, right, doink, right between two ribs, well, see, now we got a different problem, right? Or that line bisects life-sustaining tubes, right? Plumbing. Yeah, we got a problem. But if it was kind of smudged as it went along, how thick or how broad was that smudge? Because the chalk's going to lay on a black uniform no matter what, okay? But if we had a slight smudge, then that was a fillet, scooping that muscle off that bone, right? But if it was just this really faint, long smudge or whatever, you're lucky if you gave the guy an abrasion or shaved some hair off his arm or whatever the target was, okay? So it was a way to kind of keep everybody honest, okay? All right, so before I jump into the meat of everything, James, anybody jump in that? No, yes, maybe.
Chris McLaurin just said hello.
Awesome. How are the knees, punk?
And he said, Master Creed is one to remember. I need a copy, sir.
Play the recording back later and transcribe it. Wow.
I would have thought he would have had a cue card for that already.
I have to change the way we do things at the dojo. Is that way too many people asking the teacher to do all the work? You still have one good knee. Well, actually, you should have one better knee. It just hasn't healed up. Anyway, I don't want to threaten him over this. We got Shinobi Kai tomorrow night. So I bet that his lips just curled and he made that face that he makes. You know that? Because anyway, yeah, and you'll corner me as soon as you come to the dojo with your freaking notebook open. Can you say that again? Can you say it again? Yeah. Then I'll do the same thing I did to a student tonight. I was trying to teach him Shitsure Shimasu. And he said, can you say that again? I said, yeah, that again. Took him a little bit to kind of catch. Remember that? It took him a little bit to catch up. So anyway, Is that it? He was the only one that kind of jumped in, and that's what I got. Wow. Right. Trin, take care of my light work. Okay. So I jump back over here to my outline. All right. So let's start off with this whole idea of avoiding direct confrontation. Right. So again, at its heart, right, Togakure Ninjutsu emphasizes survival, adaptability, and strategic thinking. Right? This guiding principle of not fighting head to head, toe to toe, whatever. Right? This avoiding head on confrontation. It stems at its very core from the idea that the ninja's primary goal is not victory in the conventional sense, like winning over losing kind of thing, right? But survival and the achievement of a larger mission. Okay. So direct engagement, well, I'll talk about this thing next, right? For anybody that is that follows or is connected with us on Facebook, and you're on, I can't remember if I put it on the KUDEN podcast page or if I put it on the online Ninjutsu training page, but somebody sent me this video that was somebody from a completely different martial art, and they're very good at the martial art that they do, but they also, when they're teaching self-defense, see, the lessons are a little bit different. Okay, there was somebody else, and this guy definitely did Taekwondo, Tang Soo Do, something like that, based on the kind of punches and kicks and whatnot that I saw him doing. But we'll call him TKD, right? So I don't care if it's Taekwondo or Tang Soo Do, whatever. This guy is asking the other one. They're already engaged in it. It was a short, but they're engaged in this conversation. And he's like, what if this guy like post up, man, and he wants to fight? He's like, yeah, I don't want any part of that. He's like, but you've been training for this. No, I've been training for self-defense and this is another big thing that gets in people's way. And I don't have a separate episode planned, but I think we've done plenty in the past where this has been reiterated, where self-defense and fighting are not the same thing. And way too many are confusing. Right, James, you remember we just did that thing a couple of weeks ago. We were promoting a 6-week Protect Yourself and Others program for adult men, dads, fathers, dads, husbands, protecting their home, protecting their family. And the number of people that were jumping on there with they were alluding to fighting, right? Just beating the shit out of somebody. That wasn't the point. Not that we're not going to get somebody in a restraint or whatever, but one, it should be your last freaking option anyway. And we'll talk about that why here in a bit. But this instructor, I posted this thing. He's not in Ninjutsu, but it's the exact same thing that we're covering. It's a huge part of our 8 phases of effective self-defense strategy, and it's our training model, right? Where you have all these things in place to deter, to distract, to escape to safety, whatever, to keep from getting to that point where shit's going to be flying, right? And as many people who want things to be their own way, and then can't, would say, well, what's the point then? What's the point of learning all this stuff if I'm not going to throw hands? I don't know. You're talking to a guy that takes things literally. So if I'm throwing hands, a knife or a sword's been involved and things have separated from the body, then I guess I can throw the hands into the lake as I hide that. No, anyway. All right. So ninja joke. But this guy kept pushing it. And he was like, this is where I get my wallet, man. Take my freaking and go, right? Oh, I'm not giving up my money. I'm not giving up my credit cards. How much am I worth? How much is my relationship with my family worth? That kind of stuff, right? If what's in my wallet is worth more than me, or me being in the lives of my wife, my kids, my grandchildren, whatever, that speaks to a whole different area. Right? And besides that, the credit cards and whatnot are in there. Things are handled within a phone call. So it's not that big of a deal, right? Unless I see things differently, right? I mean, but you're also listening to the guy who has throwaway wallets that I take on vacation, right? Well, there's $20 in cash, not a single $20 bill. There's a 5 and 15 ones, right? Or 2 5s and 10 ones. But it looks like there's a wad of cash in there. And then the rest of the wallet is filled with a bunch of cards and whatnot, library cards, credit cards, debit cards, whatever, that are long since expired. Because when somebody mugs me and wants my wallet, I give it to him. He might do a quick check to make sure I didn't, screw him over. As long as he's satisfied, he's going to run off. Is my life worth $20? Absolutely. Right? Is my vacation and enjoyment with my family worth not spending hours or days at the local police station going through friggin' mugshots, filling out reports, making statements? Absolutely. Right. So, again, this is what we're talking about, the larger mission, the bigger picture. But this instructor, right? This guy kept asking him questions like, just what if things. And he turned it around on him. He said, what if I take physical action, this guy falls down, cracks his skull, and dies? Oh, you go to jail. Bingo, right? Who's taking care of my family then? Who do I have to hope takes care of my family, right? What happens if I take physical action and he gets one over on me? If I get injured, going to the hospital. If I get killed, going someplace else, right? A cooler, right? That kind of thing, right? What if the guy that I'm engaging with, right? I didn't take the opportunity to escape. I didn't take the opportunity to de-escalate, whatever. Has friends he's going to come back with, or they happen to know who I am, or whatever. Oh, and by the way, all the cards that are in the throwaway wallet, they're all from places that I lived before. So unless he's going to do skip tracing, he's not going to find me. Anyway, so there are all these things, right? There is the bigger mission, which should be somebody who talks self-defense should be more focused on like protecting the family, surviving incidents, being around, having more options, conflict resolution, those kind of things. Because the bigger mission isn't about whooping somebody's ass. It's getting home to family, right? Getting back to your life, those kind of things. Now, I'm not saying that throwing hands is not an option. That's on our list. But at the same time, if we are not strategic thinkers and we haven't tried other things, or we're forced into a situation where we have no other choice, then, right, the consequences may be more than we can bear. Okay. And I've already alluded to some of the stuff, but direct engagement, right? Just jumping right into the fight and fighting head on, right? We'll call it a fair fight. Okay. Not that the stuff that we're doing, most people wouldn't think that most of the stuff that we're doing is cheating. Okay. And they're absolutely right. Just in case anybody thinks that we are cheating, just be clear, Ninja don't cheat. However, we do rearrange the odds in our favor. Okay. So call it what you want. Anyway, so when we're going toe to toe, whatever, right? This increases risk, right? And usually unnecessarily, okay? Because if we're thinking self-defense, we're not talking sport fighting, we're not talking two bulls at a bar on a Saturday night that bump shoulders or whatever, right? That typically are about the same size, whatever, right? These fair fight kind of things. we're going to be outgunned. Sometimes literally, right? But we're going to be outgunned because nobody, no mugger, no thug on the street or whatever is going to jump somebody that they think can whoop their ass. Nobody looks across the street and goes, I think he can kick my ass. I think I'll go attack him. I mean, what, suicide by victim? I mean, come on, right? So this bigger mission points to we don't take unnecessary risk. This is no different than when we're teaching wilderness survival training, right? The universal rule, the number one priority or rule for survival, period. I don't care if we're on a battlefield in the middle of a war, we are in a emergency wilderness survival situation, we're being attacked by somebody mano a mano, we're in a relationship that whatever has a shit ton of manipulation, abuse, not necessarily physical, that drains energy. Everything that we do drains energy, right? We don't have a finite amount, so why we sleep, right? It's like plugging ourselves into our own personal charger. The universal rule of survival is energy conservation. Okay, so it's absolutely, from a ninja's perspective, it's absolutely stupid. It's moronic to think that we're going to go toe to toe with somebody who has cut us from the herd, right? Because muggers, just like the lion on the Serengeti, doesn't go after the strongest gazelle. They look for the one who, right, is going to be easy to trip up and eat for lunch. Okay, so yes, they're the mugger and whatnot is looking for somebody that looks like they have money and whatnot. Generally speaking, they're not going to mug homeless, right? Crime among the homeless is typically done by other homeless. Okay, or I know there are some serial killers out there that do what they do, but I'm talking about generally across the board. So we have to assume that they're bigger, stronger. We don't have to assume if we can see it, but they're armed, or there's advantages. Even if we're just looking at them and they look like they're our size, our general build, age, fitness level, whatever. If they don't have an advantage, well, that was their freaking stupidity, because that's just how the predator prey world works. So we have to assume that they've got advantages that we don't know about. So things tend to be problematic. Hatsumi Sensei, one of the most famous quotes is being passed around the internet, and all these things go through waves, but it's anything can happen, right? In an attack situation, right? In one of these scenarios. So you must be able to use weapons, right? Well, yeah, but if he's unarmed, I'm 5'6" and change. Okay. I've got bad knees. I've got arthritis, right? I've got scarring and injuries from my police and military days, all that kind of stuff, right? I mean, I'm coming up on 62. If he's 20 something and, he's fit because he's been running from the cops all the time, or mixed up in this or that or whatever, of course he's going to be more fit. So, but I'm 5'6" and change. If he's 20 something, even if you're my size, there's a disadvantage, huge disadvantage. Okay. Even if I weren't this age, and even if I weren't debilitated, 5'6" and change going up against somebody who's 6'5" and built like a brick shithouse. For those of you who know the context, right? Not a good idea. So yeah, stick would be helpful. Yeah. A rock would be helpful, whatever. Okay. So again, not a good idea because because of the increase of risk, and our focus is on the larger mission. Takamatsu Sensei once said that only those who had something to lose, he's talking about family, loved ones, you've built a life, and this isn't to undermine anybody. And this isn't about level of income or anything like that, right? You've got a decent family. I mean, you can be struggling financially, but you've got solid values and all that kind of stuff. You've built a good life. I have a student just came to me Really, really, really good guy. Really good guy, right? He laid out past bad life decisions, right? And it's taken him a good 16 years to not only get past the guy that was always in trouble for this or that, but to get over the stigma. So the cops weren't, if he drove past him on the street, they whoop, right? He's a white guy, by the way, so it's not just like he's being pulled over because he's black, right? Although that's our joke in the dojo, right? I've thrown that out in the dojo. Somebody will say something, and I'll go, "You don't like me, do you?" It's because I'm black, isn't it? Okay? So, again, if your sensitivities are bothered by what I just said, then you're going to be easy pickings, easy prey for everyone who's going to come at you with psyops, right? So again, be careful. Right? So anyway, for most people that are of the fighter mindset, the nose to nose, toe to toe, it's a challenge. So they're going to do that thing, right? But the ninja's strength, right? Our strength, hopefully, if we're practicing and training and understand actual ninjutsu, not what it looks like. Right? There's going to be plenty of references over the next 3 episodes where I talk about these yahoos that only see things superficially and just assume that it's just a bunch of shit thrown together, and then they do that and create their own brand of ninjutsu. Shit by any other name. Doesn't smell like a rose. Anyway, so but the ninja strength lies in deception, evasion, and control through indirect means. That means he can't see the thing coming. Okay, he doesn't understand what you're doing. Right. Last week for Whiteboard Wednesday, I covered one of the 3 conventional ranges that are normally seen in Japanese martial arts. And I had to explain this stuff because I didn't want people to be confused. We talked about long range, close range, and perfect range, right? But I'm going to ignore perfect range for the moment because you can always go find the Whiteboard Wednesday. Long range isn't what most people think. It's not like lunge punch and kicking range and stuff like that, or weapons range. This tol mai, right? Distant or far distance is actually out of range. Neither person can engage from that range. They can't deliver something to the other person. And then chikamai is as close range. Chika means near or close. It doesn't mean super close, nose to nose, we're in grappling kind of thing, which is when we cover range in a different context that, it kind of leads in that direction. Chikamai is you're in range and one or both of you can throw shit. Okay. But the theme last week, Tolmai, was based on this out of range distance where most people waste opportunities. There's a shit ton of opportunities when you're out of his reach for you to gather information. We're a ninja, for God's sake. That's our primary skill set. Gather information and assess and look at different things. I gave you 4 factors, or gave folks that were in on the class 4 factors to gather information so that as you got closer, or he got closer, right, you have already built a fortification, apply the same principles that the ninja would apply when they were building a castle or any kind of conventional fortification, and already be set up where your kamae and everything matches his fight style. And I don't mean matches it so that you can fight like him. I mean matches it so that it neutralizes his preferences before he even throws anything. It makes his job harder, right? And then we looked at some other dynamics and things like that so that you're not showing your hand, right? You don't go to kamae too soon so he has information about you. Those kind of things, right? Very, very important stuff, okay? So then, again, during the Friday virtual masterclass, then we did these drills that presented a lot of these principles where as we're moving in, and his hands start coming up as he gets closer. So by the time he gets to that point where in one step he can throw a punch, he's already up in gear, right? So I want to, as he's moving in, I want to keep my hands in a place where it mirrors his. So I'm in full kamae at the moment that he would throw the. Oh wait, same kind of setup as a kata. No shit. Well, I mean, I knew that, but you get the idea, right? So you're never going to do a kata. There's a whole lot more freaking lessons than just uke tsuki. You do uke nagash, and that. Okay. So I think students got more out of that. Hopefully, right? But plenty to work on. So again, a lot of these things that we're doing, we're taking control from him long before he ever realizes that he lost it, right? You may hear that again, okay? So again, general principle in Togakure Ryu is that in Ninjutsu, nothing is ever what it seems. I said that earlier, right? So one, we're avoiding direct confrontation. We're always going to be coming in from an odd angle, or we're going to be manipulating things. You'll see here as I go along, I'm going to be talking about Tai Sabaki. This will tie in a bunch of things that you're probably already familiar with, but it'll put it in context from a strategic thinking standpoint, right? And everything, like I said, nothing in Ninjutsu is ever what it seems. It's loaded with deception, right? Everybody understands the evasion. A lot of people misunderstand control from the ninja's perspective. I mentioned deception, evasion, and control. Control to most people implies force. I'm going to manhandle them, or I'm going to give them an ultimatum or whatever, right? In Ninjutsu, control is taken by controlling his perceptions about what he thinks is real, right? Because that's going to affect everything else: thoughts, plans, level of intent, physical action, whatever, okay? The goal of a ninja is to take control from the attacker while leaving him or her believe that they have freedom of choice, they still have control, right? And it doesn't arouse suspicion until it's like playing a game of Jenga. You can keep pulling those blocks out, but sooner or later you get to that one that if it gets pulled, whole damn thing falls down, right? Or house cards, whatever. So we take control from him long before he ever realizes that he lost it. Okay. These were the litmus tests that those of us who got on board way early before the whole sweeping wave to Budo Taijutsu, which again had Hatsumi Sensei had an agenda. He had very specific reasons for doing that. And he never took Ninpo Taijutsu off the plate. He put it on a delay mechanism or on a delayed timer because the student needed to learn certain things about conventional warfare before they ever touched Ninjutsu for various reasons. Again, I'll cover that next episode. Okay. So again, general principle in Ninjutsu, nothing is ever what it seems. So this underpins, again, many Togakure strategies, especially those emphasizing the use of Kyujutsu Tenkan, okay, this disguising truth and falsehood. Okay, this is the art of blending truth, falsehood, whatever, to confuse and manipulate an opponent. Okay, the goal is to keep the adversary off balance mentally and physically, right, and often emotionally, spiritually, right? And I mean religiously, right? What this does is it leads them into mistakes or positions where they're at a disadvantage. Okay, and they do it of their own free will. So this is the important part. Okay, remember what I said about we have a larger mission in mind. This isn't just about whipping this guy's ass now because he disrespected me. Right? We have to think about the potential next battle, which might be with the freaking legal system. Right? How about if I just not do that? Or the battle might be to stay alive so I don't end up on a cold slab in a refrigerator, right, in the morgue. But you've got all these other things too. Like when I manipulate this person and they lose, okay, If the manipulation is correct, they should think that they lost of their own accord. If I wouldn't have done that thing or these mistakes, right? Whatever. Because if he thinks you whipped his ass, that opens the gateway to vengeance, right? Him wanting to get revenge. It's not just in sport matches where they talk smack and like, I want a rematch. Now this guy will come back with, his whole family and 7 of his friends, and they're loaded for bear because there's payback. A lot of people that are fighter mentality or the tough guy mentality, right? I don't think that far ahead. Okay? Because all that matters is this guy needs to be taught a lesson. Okay? Ninja always, right? The ninja is a master strategist, right? If I do this thing, what are the ripples? Okay. It's the same thing, or it can also be not doing, right? Because this bleeds over to life. Okay. If I don't practice today, if I don't restart my training today, if I don't start, right? If I don't send that email to that teacher I want to work with, or if I don't put the damn phone down or turn off the TV and get off my Netflix binge, and what? That thing that we know we should be doing, right? Then same kind of consequences. Okay. Anyway, so a couple of tactical examples from Togakure. As a matter of fact, before I jump into these, let me just jump back over here. James, questions, comments, anything pop in? Yeah, we started out with a shit ton of people, but apparently we're not dancing monkeys demonstrating technique. So, or, people assume that they already know what the hell I'm going to say because they got a couple of clues and cues, which is, by the way, one of the ways you can manipulate somebody. You don't need to do a lot. You don't need to spin a huge story. Most human beings, right? And you have to be mindful of your own way of doing things to not fall prey to this same thing, right? Ego does this, right? Most human beings only need 1 to 3 pieces of information before they assume the rest and they go into action following that rabbit hole. So you don't need to paint a huge picture. You don't need to be a Picasso, right? If I take up a position and start moving like a Taekwondo person, right? Especially with that lead leg, keep my body high, that kind of thing. Hands are in a certain place. If I'm doing American Taekwondo, they're in a different place if I'm doing traditional Taekwondo, right? James knows, right? I mean, one of the things that we always try to set up at the dojo is you don't have to do that art, but if you learn a couple of key pieces, somebody will jump to those conclusions, even if they think, oh, okay, you're a Taekwondo guy, but your stance is shit. Okay, well, that just means he understands it better. But what's that going to do to his confidence? Right? I don't know if we're doing it for Daikomyo-sai or if it won't be until spring camp, but one of my guys has been doing those kind of arts for a long time, right? He's off and on, Josh Bloom. Is he on tonight? Okay.
Well, if he is, he hasn't said anything.
Okay. Well, I've already arranged with Josh that for one of these upcoming things, he's going to do a breakout session. Now, breakout sessions during camps are about what? Hour and 15, hour and 20 minutes. So not a lot of time to teach a lot of things, but that's enough time to teach one very common, very popular kick. And when I say common and popular, I'm also talking about fairly low level on the rank things as well, because we typically don't have to worry about people who made it to black belt and have the whole honor and respect and all that kind of stuff going on. We need to worry about the guy that signed up for the yellow belt course or the green belt course and learned a freaking kick and got really good at it. And now he's out using that shit in fights or in attacking people or screwing around or whatever. So anyway, doesn't have a lot of time to teach a lot of kicks. So we just he's going to focus on one. And that's about half, right? The reason for that side of training is so that students can learn how to do it, not necessarily because they're going to use it in like a self-defense situation. They might, right? But it's so when we practice defenses against them, the uke isn't throwing shit, and they're not throwing a kick that the defender is never going to see if they're up against this kind of person. Right? There's way too many people in the martial arts that won't explore other ones, not necessarily for the tactics and strategies. I do that, right? Because if anything's usable, ninja will just vacuum cleaner, pull it over. That which is not. But a lot of that stuff is useful if for no other reason than to paint a picture to get this guy to think that I'm a certain type of fighter, or my skill lies in a certain style. And so I can imitate that up front. And then when he comes in based on his plan to defend against that kind of fighter, that's when I switch. That's when I change and go back to our stuff. So he'll never see it because, right, assumption will meet reality, but there's a blurred area. So I need students to be proficient with the kicks of other styles or the punches or the grabs or whatever, so that they can help their training partner actually defend against the real thing, right? But the second half of class that Joss is going to be covering on that kick is the disadvantages, the tells that might go on, all those kind of things, right? So they can learn how to beat it, right? And if nothing else, if the reaction time is too slow, reinforce the need for break falls. Because anybody that's ever taken a freaking solid side kick or a spinning back kick or whatever and you got knocked off your feet, I've had students that are very, very proficient in other martial arts, right? And we've done sparring and whatnot. And, if you don't have break falls at that point where you're able to like hit the ground, roll over, be back up into a fight position, right? Then, shit, you're down and out, okay? So anyway, covering this kind of thing because we got to know what those things are. Anyway, what else we got?
Trinity just had a couple comments. This reminds me of walking into an intra-agency networking event with a goal of getting the most while losing or giving the least.
My daughter's proficient in psychology.
And she said, and the second piece sounds like the fight for a government contract and the animosity when someone loses. The competition for research is an intel business of its own with heavy and hard feelings.
Okay, so between those two comments, did everybody just hear what Trinity said beyond the subject matter itself? What she just said was, these strategies and tactics have applications far outside a mugger jumping you on the street or some jackwagon in a bar on Saturday night, or you take your wife out dancing or whatever. And it's a criminal attack. Shit happens all the time, right? And that's going to be a big part of what I'm going to cover during the whole Ninpo Budo Taijutsu. And it's not a debate. It's an important piece, right? Because one of those is about surviving, enduring, persevering, resolving, surviving, right? Dangerous or threatening situations in all realms of our life, where the other one, it's going to be a physical attack. Not that one doesn't include the other, but generally speaking, that's a one-way street. Again, for next time. So absolutely, right? You can, if you understand what we're looking at and you can translate the principles and concepts, then you can apply that to a relationship, apply that to getting a job, or inter-office politics, or somebody vying for your job and trying to set you up for failure, that kind of thing, right? Or anything like that, right? So This is not, Ninjutsu is not, it's not, I'm trying to think about how to say this nicely, but I won't. um, it's not for the martial arts is my life kind of person, right? Ninjutsu is a thinking person's life system of principles and concepts for resolving conflict, for surviving, for enduring through hard times, hardships, those kind of things. Right? It's anybody that's coming at this strictly from the fight, physical self-defense perspective is basically putting themselves in a straitjacket and then putting a clamp on your skull and cranking it down so you can't think straight because you can't get through the headache. That kind of limitation where you're going to be just getting through, but you're 90% inhibited kind of thing. It's very different, right? Not my words. Not my words. All right. What else we have, James? Any I'm full of shit comments?
No.
Oh, all right. Well,
but and then she said all this relating to starting the fight before it starts and avoiding the aftermath of confrontation.
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by starting the fight before it starts. But if you mean that, like, as soon as they project intent or you pick up information about a possible threat or whatever, you're already taking steps to mitigate that, right? You're already, because I think we covered that on Friday in Friday's class as well, that thinking about fighting or thinking about attacking is attacking, right? Because intent always precedes action, right? So the closer you can get to starting to do something when you pick up the intent or you're suspicious, but see, it even goes before that, right? That's a good intermediate place to start. So, if this is all about all this other stuff, why do we do the physical stuff up front? Well, that's a good question. One, I'll answer a lot of that next episode because we're going to be contrasting Budo Taijutsu with Nippo Taijutsu. Two, this stuff that we're talking about now that Trent has brought up and life things and the intent part, right? First of all, the physical stuff, if it goes physical, one, if we're doing Budo Taijutsu type approach, we're studying the conventional. So it'll help make the ninjutsu stuff make better sense. We're going to be less likely to miss something, and we're going to understand why we're doing what we're doing and not just from a style-based kind of thing. The second reason to do the physical first is because that's the thing that takes the longest to develop. The physical skills literally take the longest to develop. Okay. Getting your head wrapped around strategy, tactics, putting those things into play, practicing them out in the world. I mean, how often are you being attacked? So physical practice, unless you're doing it at home, you have a training partner or whatever, it's relegated to dojo practice, whatever. Okay. However often you can get with a partner. But if we're looking at manipulation of perception, we're looking at positioning yourself to be almost attack proof or manipulation proof, right? Con proof. Right? You know who's con proof? An honest, authentic person. Okay? Con men all know you cannot con an honest person. But anybody that's looking to get something for nothing, okay? If somebody dangles a discount coupon, right? Then, but you can't con somebody that's honest. Anyway, but those skills take the longest, right? Psychological stuff, much easier to get because you can practice in every relationship, in every environment, right? Assuming that you're not manipulating for nefarious reasons, right? You're limiting what you share with people based on degrees of relationship, even very close people, right? um, ferreting out information, or not ferreting out information, but divvying out information to people based on their personality type and likelihood of sharing, even innocently, right? Those kind of things. Which aspects are you presenting? One being authentic. Okay. But you can share parts of your authentic self so that people don't know everything. Okay. And that leads to this really high level where you keep everyone ever so slightly off balance, so that should they ever decide to attack, they're going to start from a weakened position to begin with. Right? And I know I've got Trinity's my daughter. She's listening. I don't know, maybe your brain's processing. How does my dad manipulate me? It's not that hard and fast, but right. A lot of it has to do with almost mixed messages, right? Where you allow certain things to happen. She visits for lunch, whatever. But there's also my authentic self where, will you let me do this thing, or can I do this, or whatever? I mean, sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no, based on the reality that dad has a life and I'm not a pushover. But also, right, she also knows that no matter what, hopefully she knows that no matter what, one, I would take a bullet for her. But my other daughter said, "That's really great, Dad. And I appreciate that you'd go that far. But the day I knew that you really loved me was the day that you said that you would kill for me." It's a warrior family. What can I tell you? Right? Not because she said, "Dad, he screwed me over. Go kill him." Not that kind of thing, right? If you touch them in the wrong way, they'll never find your fucking body. That's what I mean. And yes, it's recorded. So I just produced evidence against myself. And most people that know me know that I'm not a mouth with legs. Right? And yes, I'm older. And yes, I got a gut. And yes, I can't do 3 5-minute round. Yeah, be careful with old guys. Right? We'll make a Wile E. Coyote trap that absolutely fucking works. So anyway, but that big thing there is you keep everyone so ever so slightly off balance. And a part of that is in like mixed messaging, right? You're not lying, but they get an image of you and then you toss in another little piece of you and then you take it back. You don't take it back, but you don't show that all the time. So like every once in a while it pops out. They're like, wait, but huh? Like, even my wife, she was sure of how she thought I was going to vote in the last election. And it wasn't like in an aspect I did, but I'm not the guy to go in and pull one lever because it's blue or because it's red or whatever. Typically, I'm libertarian, independent, moderate, whatever. But she was surprised to find out that I pulled a lever on an R. I pulled 2 levers on D's. 1 was a constitutionalist and 3 were libertarians. Because human beings have a hard time putting somebody who is a free thinker, who's a critical thinker, who's a strategic thinker, into one box. Right? This throws people off a lot when they go to Japan and they're learning about religious kind of things. Okay. Like in the West, we have some kind of a weird kind of belief that you can only be one thing at a time, or one thing, period. It's almost like, you were born and it's genetically wired to you. But in Japan, you'll find people that are Shinto, Buddhist, Catholic. The hell is that? Well, they cover 3 different realms. But people that don't study things well, that makes no sense to them. Okay. So it's, again, the Japanese think it's weird that you're only looking at one aspect, but that doesn't cover this over here. I know they try to, but right, these people over here have been doing it for longer. So, okay. One thing is about understanding nature and our connection and energy. When I said Shinto, Buddhist, Catholic, right? It could have been Methodist because they've got all the denominations over there. One, is about increasing the positive and reducing the negative in real time in your life, and understanding the human condition. And the other thing is an association with something that's related to what will happen after you die, right? And why we're generating a certain thing. And again, I'm oversimplifying things, but one's about this external and our place within it. Another one is about karma and how our own actions produce the life that we have, right? That doesn't mean that other people and their karma doesn't mix with it and all that kind of stuff, okay? But the level of comfort or level of suffering, discontent, right? It's called dukkha, and it's pretty much the same thing, right? Very different than this other one, right? Well, Westerners know what, Judeo-Christian kind of things point to. So, but they're not the same realm, right? They might try to infringe on, but at least one of these historically has always tried to subjugate nature. So there's a direct conflict since we're all part of nature. Anyway, so anything else, James, before I move on to the next piece?
She just clarified with initiating your brain to be aware before you think you should have to, i.e. before a conversation starts or a deal is made. And Alan's on and said, I believe Ninpo Taijutsu ends a fight before it can escalate.
Okay. You can use those words for today. No, it's all good. It's a good start. And Alan's somebody that's come from very conventional fight systems. So I think he's really enjoying and eating up the whole strategic thinking kind of thing, because I think very much like me in the early stages, you come in with a certain belief system or whatever, and then certain lessons come around and it makes you go, huh? And you got to get your head wrapped around that, because it's not the typical way of thinking, right? But as soon as you start applying it, you're like, holy shit, the level of control that this gives me is just freaking amazing, right? And he doesn't even know that he lost it yet. Okay, cool beans, right? Okay, so I got to jump on. So move on. So let me just jump into this next piece here, right? So a couple of examples from Togakure itself. For those of you who have been following along, or if you're in the Platinum program, you're in the Shinobi Kai program, if you've been jumping onto the weekly coaching calls that we have Tuesdays at 8 or Friday mornings at 10 a.m. I've got a Tuesday group, Friday group, or if you're in Platinum Plus, Platinum Elite, or the Shinobi Kai program, you get both of them. I know people tend to get a little overwhelmed with all the lessons that they get, but hey, I tend to over-deliver. So you will have been familiar, especially the Friday group and the Platinum Elite, Shinobi Kai people know that during the Friday group coaching calls, I've been covering something within Togakure called the Tonko no Jutsu. Okay, Tonko no Jutsu. This has to do with, it's like the art of evasion, right? That kind of thing. It includes more things than that as well. Simplified translation: evasion, concealment. It also includes guerrilla warfare tactics, that kind of thing. A lot of folks might know it by a name that's actually just a part of it, called the Gotan Po, which is 5 elemental escape and evasion tactics. But there's a lot more to it than that. We have the Uda Gotan Po, which is the flip side of that. And we also have the Tento Juppo no Jutsu, which is 10 natural elemental evasion techniques or tactics, right? And so altogether, these are these principles and concepts. This Tonko no Jutsu was the secret of secrets within Togakure. Okay, this is the reason that when Oda Nobunaga stormed Togakure, that mountainous region. Some, right, escape. They already have plans to escape and get to safety. Another contingency stayed, kind of like the 300, right? Fight to the last, because I mean they knew they're going to be overwhelmed, but they needed cover so that the other group could get away. And then there were some that couldn't. They were ill, or they had family, or they tried to get away, but they were caught. They were maybe the tail end of the fleeing group or whatever. And so a lot of people think that they committed suicide and killed their kids so as to not be killed by the oppressor. And that wasn't it. Right? They knew, just like modern intelligence people know, that everyone can be broken. Right? It's not like the freaking movies where you're going to hold out and they'll never get any information from you. Everybody has a breaking point. Everyone has a type of torture or whatever that will break them. And they committed suicide and killed their children because the kids were learning this stuff already, and the parents had it. Everybody knew this stuff, right? They did that to keep the knowledge out of these conventional warriors' hands. It's a secret of secrets. Okay. So, but this Tonko Ninjutsu encapsulates this principle, this whole idea of one, never, ever attack straight on. And if you do, again, there's a reason for that, right? One would be, like I was alluding to earlier, I'm going to present myself as a certain type of fighter, but it's deception. Okay. Because I want him to think that I have certain preferences. I'm going to fight a certain way. So when he comes in, he's coming in to neutralize that. And then I do Jumonji no Kata or whatever the hell, right? I just change. Okay. Which will throw him off. And the other reason I might go head on is because, like, I've got no other choice. Right. So I'm going to give it my best shot. Or again, it's that smoke screen so that the family can get away. I'm holding it for just a couple minutes so that whatever. But again, for the most part, no. Anything that looks like we're coming at them head on, there's an ambush waiting for them. Okay. So again, instead of meeting force with force, Tonko no Jutsu teaches methods of escape, misdirection, using the environment to vanish, leaving the opponent confused, or chasing shadows. That kind of thing, right? There's one of those elements that I talked about, right? Is called bird of prey. What the hell? It's bird of prey. Well, think about the way a bird of prey hunts, how it operates, right? How it moves in for the attack, perches on a tree limb or a outcropping of rock, or soars above, right? Has this high vantage point. Right? And again, that's just kind of an idea, right? Another element is snow. What the hell, right? It's everything from the use of snow to understanding how, or to use that principle of muffling sound, all kinds of things, right? So anyway, there's a whole bunch of these things. Okay. Another place in the Togakure Ryu where this is big is in shuko techniques. Okay. Shuko, those hand claws. Okay. Shuko means hand armor, but they weren't just a tool for climbing and stuff. And I'm not going to get into the bullshit from the movies and whatnot. But they were used to, and most of you know, they were used to deflect or trap weapons. Okay. But let's see, they're also the idea is to create an opening for escape or counterattack without directly clashing with the opponent's strength. So, but again, it's really difficult to understand a lot of this stuff if we just go by what we've experienced in today's world. Like, we buy a cheap katana from Asian World of Martial Arts, or even the stuff from Paul Chen, right? A lot of these things are not authentic, especially if we're looking at time periods, right? in the Son Goku Jidai Warring States period, the Edo period, Heian, all these things, right? The only swords that were sharpened from Boshi to almost the handguard were ninja swords. Most, if not all, samurai swords were only sharpened to about a third to at best half the blade. Okay, because all the leverage is out at the end. Okay, the closer you get to the handle, you're not cutting anything. You might saw or whatever, but it wasn't as effective, right? You might get a little bit of a chopping cut or whatever. Not okay. So they didn't sharpen it there, okay, because of the way the katana is built and the way it's supposed to be used. They weren't sharpened that way, right? That's why a ninja is able to come in and catch a sword. If you notice where they're catching, now be careful the quality or the budget of the movie that you're watching, right? The catch is always below the halfway point on the sword, right? Close to the handguard, close to the hands. Why? Because all the power's out of the other end, right? You get less movement and better control and leverage closer to his hands, right? Sword's not moving as much and the blade's not sharpened. If I catch that freaking blade out where where the kisaki is sharp, right? It's been sharpened, right? Metal band or not, it'll go right through that, and then you'll have nanu or Spock hand or whatever, right? It's we need to understand how it works, okay? But in the Togakure school, shuko techniques fall under a classification of ukemi. Ukemi. Not break falls. Not that they're not involved. Ukemi means receiving body. And so ukemi, again, this is one of those general translation things. Ukemi, that means break fall. No, it doesn't. It means receiving body. Okay? It means the ability to receive and neutralize the force of an attack, which means I can get hit and ride it off. I can deflect it, whatever, right? So shuko techniques, while they can look like they're direct onward, and they're not, just like jite techniques, right? Same thing, right? We're going to catch it, we're going to deflect it. Yeah, but if you're in the wrong place, you're going to get your wrist snapped, or they're just going to change direction and kill you. I mean, you only have a freaking bar with a little hook on it. I mean, right? So the smaller the weapon, the more it's about taijutsu. And if it's about Ninpo taijutsu, then there's a bunch of stuff that's going on that, and it sows confusion, right? When that shuko stops that sword and you lock him in place and he can't move it, he can't escape. Same thing with a jite. When you do that, they're confused because like they don't understand how it's locked in, whatever. Okay. There's another area has to do with it centers around the kusarigama. So if you know what that is, the kusarigama is a sickle with a long chain. Kusari, chain. Gama is kama, with just transliterated. Right. So it's a sickle with a length of chain, 6 to 9 feet, give or take. Not as long as the Koketsu Shoge's rope, which is 12 to 18 feet long. So what you have, this allows you to engage from a distance, right? So from that tolmai, right? I often reference this, right? Murphy's laws of combat. Well, we all know Murphy's law, right? If anything can go wrong, it will, right? But there's a whole list of Murphy's laws of combat that combat people have made up. Like one is never forget that your equipment was made by the lowest bidder, right? That's important to know. But the big one that I point out a lot is if the enemy's in range, so are you. But see, in Ninjutsu, that's not always the case. As a matter of fact, it's very rarely the case, okay? Because what changes that is weapon system, okay? If he's shooting at me with standard combat rifle, M16, AK-47, 9mm pistol, whatever. And I have a Law rocket launcher. I can be way farther away. Okay, Sherman tank, whatever. Or not Sherman, but what do they have now? Abrams, those kind of things, right? And I'm sure they have other ones ahead, but I haven't been in the military in a long time. So, but either way, my weapon system, if my weapon system provides me with better range, long range than theirs. So it's the same thing with this, right? In a land where the greatest reach was spear, halberd, more standard katana, and I come at them with this short thing that they can see, but I'm able to whip this freaking chain or rope with a weight on it out and break their fingers or pop them in the forehead or whatever with it, right? Ensnare their leg, pull them off balance, move in and finish them off that way. Very, very different, right? So, but again, that chain, right? We're ensnaring them. It misleads the opponent, right? But at the same time, we're remaining out of range of direct attacks, always, okay? A big part of Gyokoryu training, although most people encounter this term within the Kotoryu, is Kuraidori, right? Kuraidori, just generally speaking, is about strategic positioning. There's a shit ton that goes into Kuraidori, but strategic positioning ensures that the ninja controls the spatial dynamics, those kind of things, right? Avoiding direct engagement by constantly shifting to advantageous positions, to like, how do I position my body so I'm just outside of their reach, but I can reach them? Okay. So for everybody that tends to break their profiled kamae and want to be like this, you just shortened your reach by 8 to 12 inches on the lead arm. Right. That's not the way people fight anymore. Well, okay, then fight like everybody else. But you just stripped a shit ton of power out of the techniques. But thanks for inserting a 21st century's fighter's limited perspective on engagement in a way that overrides a system that has 2,000 years behind it of people that did nothing but study warfare. Whatever. Okay. So anyway, very quickly, let's just run through a couple of applications, other Bujinkan lineages as we kind of wrap this up. Again, Togakure Ryu exemplifies this principle, right? This indirect engagement, tactical deception. Again, in either case, right? We're not meeting them head to head, toe to toe. But again, we recognize that if he knows what we're doing, if he can see it happening, if the way we fight looks like everybody else's, and this guy has any modicum of experience, well, then he's already seen it. From the stance on, he's already seen it, he's already experienced it, he's already developed defenses against it. Well, how does he know it? Well, because he does it too, right? So the game that conventional fighters play is, I'm going to do it like everybody else, but better. I'm going to do it like everybody else, but with a twist. Okay? Alan can vouch for this because he's heard it over and over again in the weeks that he's been a member of the school. This is not about technique. This is not about style. This begins with the very way we think about things. Okay? So again, this indirect engagement, this tactical deception, this is not just for ninja specific lineages, but remember, these things all synthesized around each other, right? And they shared things and whatnot. Okay. So, but these things can also be found in the other lineages, right? So these schools are they've blended the strategic elements, right, of both Budo Taijutsu and Ninpo Taijutsu. Again, that's for next episode, right? But the big thing here is that more often than not, the emphasis is on adaptability over rigid confrontation. I think most of us get that part. Reproducing it is something entirely different, because in an attempt to reproduce it, some people hear, you don't need the kata, we don't use forms, that kind of thing, and they just throw it all away, and then they end up looking like MMA guys. Or they become kata collectors and they learn the forms and they work on making variations. But when we start doing things like sparring or randori or whatever, they run afoul because they need to think about things. They still need to think about things step by step. Anyway, all right. Quick couple of examples from a couple of the lineages, okay, about this kind of idea, right? So in the Gyokoryu, one of the principles here is preemptive strikes and controlling angles. Okay, not just ours, theirs. Okay, so an example, and this example tends to be general across all of them, but since Gyokoryu is the root of our Budo Taijutsu, we focus here, right? And that is in Tai Sabaki. Okay, Tai Sabaki people often translate as footwork or evasion or whatever, but Tai Sabaki itself, Tai, like in Taijutsu, this means body. Okay? Sabaki actually means management or managing the body. Okay? So there's a lot more to it than just evasion. There's a lot more to it than just footwork. Okay? Tai Sabaki really emphasizes avoiding the attacker's line of force by shifting diagonally, attacking weak points like joints and muscles and things like that, while never meeting their strength directly. Okay. So correct Tai Sabaki does have evasion, right? We shift off 30, 45 degrees, give or take, right? Diagonal. So we are angled to the line of the attack, but we're profiled to them. So they miss, right? It causes them to waste a shot. But at the same time, we close off virtually all of our own targets. Because remember, we went from open, and they were closed as they came in. They had the advantage. So in one move, I'm evading, closing off my targets, but I've moved to an angle that, based on his attack, all of his targets are wide open. I am out of range for his follow-up, which means he has to step or work harder to get at me with the next thing. And if I've done it correctly, based on timing, he's also stretched out. So a kick isn't possible without a quick shuffle step or an adjustment to fix himself. But while I'm out of range, he's in range. There's a lot to this. This is not as simple as just get out of the way. Okay. So again, just to start, right? Kotoryu, one of the primary principles, breaking the structure and balance of the opponent, and preferably in as few moves as possible. The core principle is often described as moving to a position where you can take the attacker down or at least off balance with one finger. Doesn't mean you're going to use one finger, but what that points to is that Tai Sabaki, but being in a position where you are strong and it takes minimal effort because you've lined up with his balance line to destabilize him, if not break him altogether. Okay. As examples, right? Techniques like Setto, right? These techniques focus on, and again, Kotoryu kata are very short compared to Gyokoryu kata. Okay. So again, it's just a different approach on doing things. Kotoryu, Hatsumi Sensei is always called that the backbone, right? In this case, Koppojutsu is not bone method like we're attacking the skeleton and how we do things and whatnot. It's the backbone of the martial arts. What that means is these are the core principles that if you master these, you can end things, right? Very, very quickly, right? And if you understand that self-defense statistical reality that the average attack is over in 2 to 10 seconds, he wins or you get your shit together. In the modern world, we can recognize that, look, we need to stay within that thing, because if we're going to have a blast of power, we have to keep it under 11 seconds. Because, again, based on your fitness level, that's all the glycogen stores in your muscles that you have to burn off for a wind sprint or just a quick blast of things before your body has to kind of go into a holding pattern with those pieces that you cook the glycogen off. It's a type of sugar that allows your muscles a quick burst of power, strength, and speed. your body, those parts are going to have to kind of recharge. Okay? And you can see it in certain types of fights and whatnot. It's easier to see in grappling fights, but in the punching ones, whenever you see them back off and they're moving around and whatnot, okay, whether they know this science or not doesn't matter. They're feeling that ability to go again and blast that thing out. Tends to work in 7 to 11 second cycles. You got a burn, and then you've got a reset, recharge, burn, reset, recharge, right? So, but the longer a fight goes, the longer an attack goes, the harder it becomes to win, especially if he brought a bigger body or other advantages, right? So, Seto, for anybody that doesn't know it, Seto means to fold and knock down. And so, whether he's coming in to grab a lapel or he's coming in to punch or something like that, right? We're shifting in a direction where we shoot through that arm, right? To knock it, not just to knock the arm out of the way, we're striking the arm diagonally away from the body, but also diagonally down, because we're always trying to break more than one line of balance at a time, because it screws up the brain. The brain can't handle like multiple pieces of information, multiple lines of balance, and that kind of thing, because there's too much conflicting information coming in. So in the scrolls, the goal is 3 or more. Okay, so there is side, there's down, right? So in this case, it's a simplified version, but I'm striking there and then I'm cutting back in an opposite direction because the torso is now open along the butsumetsu, along the side here. And so hitting there, and then I'm coming in at a 30 to 45 degree down angle through the floating rib, right? So it presses into the liver on one side, spleen on the other, right? That causes the hips to shift, the knees to buckle, and to drop them straight into the ground. Okay. Now, if you understand, Seto is a Shoden no Maki kata, first level kata. Okay. If you understand what you're looking at, that attack could also have been this person reaching out to grab your sword or whatever. So you're striking their arm away. That shot to the body, done unarmed, we're using a Koppelken or a Shikanken or something like that. But it's actually done with the tsuka of a sword, because when people are looking at this unarmed stuff, what they're forgetting is that in ancient Japan, warrior class, they're all carrying around 1, 2, or more weapons in their obi, in their sash. So I knock that thing away, ram the butt of the tsuka, the handle, bang, in there to destabilize him, and then I can quickly draw and cut. The end of all the Shoden no Maki kata end with your hands in a position where you can cut him and kill him before he hits the ground. Right? This is not point fighting. Okay? But there's this deceptive footwork to strike from unexpected angles, right? Unbalancing the opponent without engaging their center of power. They're coming in to do their thing, and I'm actually going to move through it. So they still come forward, knock this arm out of the way. The inertia from all this body mass is still going to fall forward. And when their body puts on the brakes and fires muscles to stop that fall, it's like putting them in a vice for a quarter of a second. You lock them down. So when you hit here, the body won't even flex with it. It does in training, because we tend to give folks a little extra time. But that technique there is no different than Jumonji no Kata out of the Kyonapo from the Gyoko school. It's the same timing, right? Catch, hit, right? And so they end up, you break the kamae so that they're stuck, and then in that kihon, we bail out, because the kihon is teaching a hit and run kind of thing, because we might need to just tell this guy, look, chill, or we're striking to back out and change position, because that changing of position allows me to draw the sword and kill him, or it didn't have the result that it was supposed to have, and so it's a bailout, right? I covered that a couple of weeks ago. So, but either way, it's this idea of you get off the center of power, disrupt them so you can catch something, right? It's always deceptive. Most people put way too much effort into the block or whatever, and their hands way too far away, or it's if they think about things from the perspective of power, like conventional fights, they're missing the setup that occurs. that the kata is trying to teach. Anyway, in the Shinden Fudo Ryu, right? That's now most. I don't know how many folks know that there's two specializations in Shinden Fudo Ryu. We have a completely different set of scrolls. We have Shinden Fudo Ryu Daken Taijutsu. We have Shinden Fudo Ryu Jutaijutsu. Okay, different, right? I'm only going to talk about the Daken Taijutsu here, but yeah, just yeah. And then there's the Omote, and these is the Ura, right? They're not mirror opposites, either way, right? So again, in Shinden Fudo Ryu, the principle is natural, flexible stances, kamae, whatever, and unexpected strikes. Okay, the whole approach is natural. Right? There's a concept in Shinden Fudo Ryu, Shizen Shizoku, which is nature to the extreme. Again, for a whole other lesson, but it's not. It can't be about style. It can't be about contrived mental projections, right? Learning from nature, learning the nature of the body, that kind of thing. So, as an example, right, Shizen no Kamae. Shizen no Kamae comes from Shizen Fudo Ryu. Now, there is a Shizen no Kamae looking thing in the Gyoko Ryu. It's called Hira no Kamae, right? So, it's a common thing across the board, but the focus, right? In Kukishinden Ryu, there is a something that looks like Shizen, but you're looking to the side. That's actually Seigan. Because what we would call Seigan in Kukishinden Ryu is called Katate Hitsu no Kamae, single hand escaping posture. Anyway, so in Shinden Fudo Ryu, in the Shizen no Kamae, this allows us, right, to appear non-threatening, right? It's one of the first things we teach people, right? This lulls the opponent into complacency before we end up delivering these unexpected, powerful strikes. Anybody in Mod 1 is learning this stuff, right? The way we tend to frame Shizen no Kamae in Mod 1, though, is because most people come in looking for self-defense, and I say this is our ready position, and their brain starts to cook off because they're used to ready positions looking like this, right? Except that if we focus on surprise attacks, right? Not a bow in, ready, fight, not that kind of thing, right? It's a surprise attack. Then chances are we're standing in a room or we're standing on the street, whatever. And there's variations to Shizen no Kamae. One foot or the other could be forward, which simulates walking, which depicts that kind of off position. It's not always side 50-50. Okay. But Shizen no Kamae in this context is the same as Hira no Kamae. I mean, who the hell does that? Right? Well, you're wide open. Yeah, I am. Come on in. Okay. So again, it lulls them in, or it does the opposite, right? The fool, sorry, right, is going to see you wide open and come rushing in which case it's an open bear trap. Okay. The experienced person who sees that and where you should be stressed or you should be covered, and there you are, you're either standing like this or you're standing just in Shizen, that's going to push some buttons and send up some red flags, because is he ready or is he not ready? See, that's going to stall the guy who's really, really good, the guy that you need to think about or you should be worried about because he's a thinker too. See, I need to do things that unbalance him, put him on guard so he doesn't rush in, because him I need time for. The jackass that comes rushing right in, okay? Not that he's not dangerous, he's really dangerous, but all I need to do is slip the line just a little bit and now I'm beside him. It's a flanking maneuver, right? It's just like putting bait in an open bear trap, and animal comes along, can't help itself, steps in, and the rest is history, right? Big Togakure principle, right? Kukishinden Ryu. In Kukishinden, the big thing there is weapon mastery and distance control. So Kukishinden tends to be a battlefield kind of thing, where Tagagi Yoshin is just the opposite. It was designed for in close quarters. So either you're inside, Japanese buildings very small, space is a premium, you're living on an island, or it's at certain points in history, it was a bodyguard school. So angles are a little weird, that kind of thing. But in Kukishinden, an example would be Bojutsu techniques. Obviously, they involve maintaining superior range, right? We're using ski, thrusting kind of action, sweeps, whatever. But the idea is to outmaneuver the opponent rather than clashing head on. For those of you who have learned Ashibarai, Yokomenuch, those kind of things, these are Kihon techniques. Typically, we do them in the beginning face to face with a partner. I mean, we're profiled, but we're way far away so that when we're striking and aiming for the leg or the side of the head or whatever, what ends up happening is our stabs clash. You can always tell somebody who doesn't understand that the distance and the positioning allow for safety, and that we're actually aiming the staff strike at the target across from us, but we're too far away to hit it. And if we're striking correctly, and they are as well, right, we get into this position where it becomes kind of this neutral thing. You can tell those who don't know that because they obviously look like they're aiming to smack sticks against each other. It's not about that. Okay. But in the actual combat version of those things, which usually lead off with a leg sweep, okay, it's not this guy with a staff and you having a staff. It might be. He might have a spear. He might have a naginata. Conventionally, we do it with a sword. And as he's coming in, we step off that line while delivering that ashibarai, that leg sweep. Because the idea is we're shifting offline, sweeping his leg out from under him so he crashes and burns on his own blade. So I don't want to be standing there where he loses control and this freaking sharp razor blade comes at me, right? And then Yoko Menuch shows you try to do that and he drops that sword or whatever the weapon is to guard against it. So you just double back, smack him in the head. He guards against that. So on the full versions, there's a whole bunch of guarding on his point. And then that last one where you pull back and take it over your head and come around again, it's at a high or mid level. And then last second, boom, it drops down to take the leg out. So what looks like this cut and dry kind of thing, there's a lot of deception and manipulation that's buried in these things. But again, you typically have to be initiated into them, right? Binge watching YouTube is maybe the most intuitive. Anyway, there's a bunch of these things that are in here. Everything from strategic disruption of rhythm, soft control and manipulation, all that kind of stuff, right? Kumo, even all the way to the Kumogakure ryu, which is another form of Ninpo. The big principle is in concealment and misdirection, right? Techniques in that lineage tend to focus on using environmental factors like smoke, mist, low light conditions, or whatever to escape or attack from obscured positions. A big one is in sinking very, very low for night fighting, right? Getting way low. And if I can get my big gut and my arthritic knees that low and be able to move well, nobody else has an excuse, especially the ones that think that, I'm full of shit, right? But you want to get lower than them. So what you end up doing is silhouetting, because very rarely, if ever, are you in a completely dark sky, right? If it's completely dark night and it's cloud free, the stars, there's way more of them. It lights up the place. It was way brighter way back in those days than it is today because you don't have the glow from artificial light from houses, from street lights, those kind of things, right? You can always tell when you're driving and it's really, really dark and you're coming up on a city, there'll be this freaking glow. There'll be this glowing dome that'll come across the horizon. And that's how you spot like civilization, just in case you're lost, right? Find a glowing dome, right? It looks kind of sci-fi like. But anyway, you get low, so you silhouette his upper body against the horizon, right above the horizon, and your body blends in with the darkness of the ground. So it's harder for him to see you, easy for you to know where he is at all times. Okay, very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff. Anyway, Gyokushinryu Ninpo, their specialization was in psychological warfare, right? So when I say Mitsubishi, I don't just mean like blinding powders, okay? But there's ways to affect the eyes in many different ways, right? Again, serves an immediate distraction that allows the practitioner to evade or counter or whatever without engaging directly. But there's a lot more to it than that. We say psychological warfare. There's everything from hiding the length of your weapon so he can't take proper distance, proper mai, to like the shinobi shizoku or shinobi zue, right? Togakure, you had these as well, which were the hollowed canes or the weapons that had a weapon within a weapon. So the hollowed canes that either had a blow dart in it, or it had a blade hidden inside of it, or it had a long chain with a weight on the end of it, all kinds of stuff, right? So anyway, again, this all goes back to kind of this whole idea of this Kyojutsu Tenkan across all lineages, right? In all of the Bujinkan lineages, and also Jininkan and Genbukan by extension, because they both branched out of the Bujinkan. Okay, this concept of Kyojutsu Tenkan, this disguising or juxtapositioning truth and falsehood, right, appears as a very, very common thread, right? So the whole emphasis here is that the battle is as much mental as it is physical. And when I say mental, I also include emotional, right? So whether through strategic positioning, through deceptive movement, psychological manipulation, or whatever, right? The ninja's path, by and large, avoids predictable head-on combat. So when these jackwagons post comments on the videos and whatever, I take it with a grain of salt. I know some of my students get like offended and whatever, but what you need to do is reverse engineer all those freaking flaming comments, right? And look for, like, when they say, I would do this, or that doesn't work, or whatever. Anybody that says that wouldn't work, right, is saying, I don't have a defense for that. Anybody that's saying, I would defend against this, or here's how I would beat it, is already basing that answer on having seen the fucking technique up front. Why would I do something to somebody who has already seen that? It's like a magician showing a trick, the same way, to the same person. That's just moronic, right? It's not a thinker's kind of thing. We're strategic, we're tactical, whatever. And again, winning takes on a whole different meaning. Okay. So the unifying philosophy, right, is to control the engagement without the opponent realizing that they've lost control. Okay. So just kind of wrap this up, right? Very, very quickly. This principle of avoiding direct confrontation, not just a tactical preference, right, but a core tenet. It's not just a core or a tactical preference in Togakure Ryu, right? But this is a core thing that permeates all Bujinkan lineages. Right? This philosophy of, and I don't know if I don't know that far back that, because I only know where these things started to merge. So I don't know if it came in with it, or if the very fact that all these things ended up eventually merging with Togakure Ryu anyway, right? That's where the shit. I don't know. And you know what? I don't care, right? I don't care. People try to break things apart, and I only want to learn Gyoko stuff, Gyoko way, Kuki shit. Well, tough shit, right? For how many hundreds of years have these things already been freaking assimilated, right? Good luck learning the pure thing. Okay, so this philosophy, right, of control, of deception, adaptability, right? This is what exemplifies. This is what really, right, it makes ninjutsu, right? These things are at the core, right? They make up the true essence, I guess, if I can use that, right, of ninjutsu. It makes what makes ninjutsu. Okay, ensuring survival and victory, if we're going to think about victory like a win kind of thing, through skillful indirect engagement. Okay, negotiating with a thug or whatever, and make him not think that I'm worth his effort, and he goes away. To a ninja, that's a win. But to a conventional fighter, well, nobody won or lost because like an ass didn't get kicked. Yay. That means nobody went to the morgue. Nobody went to the ER. Nobody went to jail. This person probably doesn't know my name. He's going to go on to the next easy target. Right? But this is not, it's not the same. Okay. So again, I thought this was really, really important to go through and at least make sure that folks were at least partially getting their head wrapped around it. Okay. There are several things that I've already mentioned that have to do with like the difference between Rinpo Taijutsu and Budo Taijutsu. And again, with this deception and manipulation and whatnot. So next episode, we're going to take a look at making sure that we understand the differences between Budo Taijutsu and Ninpo Taijutsu, where there's an overlap, that kind of thing. And then the third one in this series, we're going to take a look at the hierarchy within a ninja clan and what these things would look like and how ninja at the different levels, how would Genin, the field operatives, apply this stuff? How would Chunin, right, the field commanders, the ones like if you understand the 007 James Bond kind of storyline, how the M's of the world, right, would use psyops and stuff to do this stuff, and then how a Jonin, the high man, right, there's usually only one in a lineage, right, they're the forward face of the lineage, but nobody knows that this person is a ninja. They think they're a samurai. They think that they're just a successful person and whatnot that they allow into their circles. Okay, how would he or she apply these principles? Okay, it's very difficult to become the ninja that we say that we want to be without knowing what the hell it is that we're talking about. So here we are. Okay, those who want to know and are open to the lessons being transmitted and passed on, great. Those who want to make up shit, make up their own lineages, train any way they want, but delude themselves into believing that they got it all taken care of, right? I don't need a teacher. I don't need that, whatever. I mean, this stuff's not that difficult. Okay. Be careful. Okay. Be careful. Hatsumi Sensei's, I remember one of the lessons I got one time, and this was a general one in a class, but he said, be careful, right? Whenever you feel defeated, right, and you think, I'm never going to get this stuff, right? You're wrong. But also be careful when you think you've got this shit all figured out, because you're wrong. Okay. There is an innate, almost there's a type of insight, right? Call it third eye, call it whatever you want, right? Where you get it and you understand it, but to describe it, it becomes more difficult. So as I've described things today, that's only scratching. Like when I describe Seto or anything that I've talked about, the Ashibarai with the bow, it's only one aspect of the deception. The deception starts from the time you take Kamai and goes all the way through the Bofurigata, the turning and whatnot, and what that's there for. The deception starts with knowing his weapon better than he knows it. Doesn't mean you have to fight that way. But I can't defend against that thing to this degree if I don't know it. Okay? So again, that in and of itself doubles back to the art of war, right? Sun Tzu's Art of War, and the chapter on it's actually the foundation. I think it's in the foundational chapter that has to do with the core essence of combat, right? if I know neither the opponent or myself, and I think it's the translation is enemy in Art of War. If I know neither the enemy nor myself, I can never win. Okay? And this goes for any problem in life, by the way. The enemy is whatever is holding you back, whatever's in your way. Okay? So be careful, right? Because often that enemy is the man in the mirror or the woman in the mirror. Okay? So, and my thing to my students is before you blame anybody else, corruption, they were born with a silver spoon in their mouth, whatever. Okay? There's a couple of core principles, like half dozen, that are necessary for success. I covered one of those tonight. Right? Before you write off, well, he's successful because he's smart. He's successful because he had money handed to him. He was successful. I think I made reference tonight that I had a student once who parents were extremely wealthy, right? Prominent members of our community and all that kind of stuff. This guy was just a shitbag, right? Blue money, whatever. He was never going to be successful because he just expected that somebody, right, mom and dad, whatever, were just going to bail him out of all of his freaking mistakes and all that kind of stuff. And then, he disowned his family when his mom and dad went, you know what, the bank's closed. Okay. Figure it out. We're tired of bailing you out. Okay. You don't do that, man. You don't do that to Blood. Blood's been doing that to his own family. So, be careful. But before you blame, before you throw it off to anything else, make sure, right? And so, like I said, before I say that person's successful because they're smart, that person's successful because they were, had money coming their way. This person over here had a team, this part, whatever, right? People can be smart. People can have money or backing. People can have support. People can have teams and whatnot, right? But if they don't have hard work, if they're not willing to do what's necessary, regardless, until it gets done, right? Regardless of what you think of Elon Musk, if Tesla starts slipping productivity or whatever, same thing with SpaceX, any of his businesses, right? Elon Musk sleeps at the plant under his desk until the problem is resolved, or he's out on the floor with people getting things done. He's not the guy going, look, get this shit done, or, asses are on the line. He works harder than anybody else. Okay. And regardless of what you think of him and his ethics, and before you start throwing, but he's a terrible father. And I don't give a shit. Okay. It's easy for ego to deflect, but that is not the ninja way. The ninja way is, here's a shitty problem. Here's a complex problem. We are outgunned, outnumbered, find the way. Figure it out. Because as soon as you blame, you stand still. And as soon as you stand still, well, then you're a sitting duck, right? Oh, and not to ignore the fact that we've convinced ourselves and the universe that we're a victim. I don't know about you, but you're going to drag me kicking and screaming into the grave. I'm certainly not going to fold because of shit going on in life. So might it kill me? Absolutely. We're all going to die anyway. However, I don't need to freaking light myself on fire. I don't need to be my own major downfall. Anyway, James, look, you're still in my little corner of the world. Questions, comments, complaints? Let's wrap this up.
I don't see anything else that's come in.
Oh, come on. Well, maybe I put him to sleep. Who knows? Send some chloroform. Right. We now have scratch and sniff, devices. Wouldn't that be cool? Chloroform somebody from a distance. I'd be freaking ninja, wouldn't it? I think that's the first time I ever throw that freaking comment out. That'd be ninja. If I do that again, just do your best at hitting me. Come up from behind. Well, I don't know if that's going to work either. Either way, do you have anything to throw on top of this? You remember the conversation I had with the students tonight, right? About the before you focus on all these other things. And one of the reasons I pointed it out was because students are notorious, especially students that go to a dojo, are notorious for confusing class time with practice time. Well, go to class 2 times a week. Great. The dojo, if you've ever been in a class, high school, university, whatever, where it had a lab, right? Could have been usually associated with sciences and things like that, right? So you have a classroom where you learn theory, you learn processes, whatever. And then you go to the lab and you try this out, whether it's a dissection or mixing chemicals, whatever, and you get a result. Either, oops, I severed the frog's. Frogs have is it frog? No, I'm sorry. Earthworms have like a 7 nodule brain kind of thing attached to a primary. I remember all that shit from 9th grade. Anyway, so if I'm supposed to be doing this thing and I cut too deeply or what, then I've screwed things up. I guess to really screw things up during a dissection I'd get a pulse. But that excuse me, it's breathing again. Anyway, just call me Dr. Frankenstein. Anyway, or I'm supposed to mix these chemicals and it's supposed to turn a certain color and it's still clear or whatever. I either get it or I don't. If I get it, then when I go back to the classroom, I'm ready for the next lesson. If I don't, I go back to the classroom and I ask WTF and fix whatever was off and then go back and do it again. But people, there's a lot of misconceptions about the whole education process in martial arts. But the dojo is the classroom. It's where you're exposed to the lessons. I know what modern training looks like, but if you go to Japan, Soke tended to do it the way it's always been done, where you're lucky if you have 1 minute to 2 minutes to practice a given form, and then he'll throw a variation at you or put a twist on twist on the scenario or throw a weapon into the process or whatever, where there's a constant, right? You don't have time to practice. You're seeing it, maybe trying it 2, 3, 1 times, whatever, right? Enough to kind of get a little visceral kind of experience, take some notes, go back home and train your ass off. Right? But you have way more time outside the dojo than you have inside the dojo. So you don't waste that. Don't waste that time. Now, in the modern world, even in our dojo, right, we give people how many minutes to work on the same thing, right? I do that because I teach for students to get to the highest level. But the format of my class is designed around the average student's habit patterns. And since most students do not practice outside of class, our classes have crutches. Less so the Shinobi Kai than the other classes, but either way. All right. So before we put people completely to sleep, anything else? Questions, comments?
Trinity just said, I used to say the only thing I was afraid of while working at the morgue was getting a pulse.
Yeah. Trin, let everybody know how old you were when you were an intern at the morgue. My wife at one point was a deputy coroner, and there was an internship that popped up, and she offered it to Trin, and it's the family. What can I tell you? Trin got super excited. So, how old were you when you were helping to process dead bodies? Did she give you the answer? Hopefully she didn't sign off already. I think she was 15. I could be wrong. But, yeah. So.
Said I may have been 15 turning 16.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really close because I think there was a minimum age. But, since your stepmom was deputy coroner, right? So anyway, interesting stuff, right? Okay, that's what I have. Hopefully this week I will get everything taken care of so people can start registering for Daikomyosai, which is January 10th, 11th, and 12th. The focus will be, I think I mentioned something before, but I changed my mind. We're going to focus heavily on Togakure Ryu. And so we're going to be, when it comes to weapons, whatnot, we're going to be doing some blowgun stuff. We're going to be doing Kyokotsu Shoge. We're going to be doing some stealth stuff. I'm going to show how to use some of the 7 basic footwork types. That's not just Togakure. I'm going to borrow from Kumogakure as well, which some people think are historically very related. They were just specialized. Like Kumogakure was very specialized in a certain type of area. But we're going to take a look at using those footwork, stealth footwork patterns in a self-defense situation. So how to use nukiash, how to use koash, those kind of things, actually as a part of a self-defense scenario. Shuriken, all that kind of stuff. So it'll be cool, right? We'll be defending against multiple sword attackers with nothing but shuriken or blinding powder. Anybody that comes, please bring an extra either handkerchief or t-shirt or whatever. You're not throwing fucking blinding powder around the dojo. Okay. Right. James says, no, he's not cleaning up after you. So not happening. Right. But either way, these are things that Togakure is a heavy influence for folks that are going from 3rd to 4th dan in our curriculum. So a lot of these things tend to work ahead for people. But it'll be fun, yeah. Okay, cool beans. Can't work on all 18 levels because horsemanship inside of a dojo is. But when it comes to like the Gotan Po, right? There's things that are not in the historical Gotan Po because they hadn't been invented yet, right? So when I look at vehicles across Doton Jutsu, which is earth-based, right? You'd be looking at being able to operate just about any land-based vehicle, right? So everything from a car, automatic and stick shift, right? Because there are parts in the world where they still have them as a primary, right? Not just leaning toward the whole lazy on the Western side here. Motorcycle, whatever, right? And then Suiton Jutsu would include kayak, canoe, motor, right? Outboard motor kind of thing, but also being able to read nautical charts and maps and things, right? You don't have to have gotten a license, okay? But the one that's not in there is air-based kind of things because wind isn't a part of the Gogyo, so therefore. But it would fit into, I mentioned bird of prey before and all that, right? Right. We can do something that our ancient forefathers couldn't do, right? We can fly. So I've never gone to ground school, anything like that. You can do those things online these days, but to get a basic understanding of how to fly a plane, right? And even land one, we have small airports near us, and pilots have to keep up their hours, right? Trin knows, my ex-wife, her mom has her pilot's license. I have to have so many hours, right? And so often these smaller airports will do airplane rides. They'll pick a day and they'll do like rides. And what you're basically paying for is the fuel, right? But you get to go up. And every time I've gone up, I just mentioned to the pilot, really, I've been thinking about doing the whole, flying thing and all that. And I can't think of any at this point who have not either explained things to me, described the different parts and the meter, the dials and the whatever. But most of them have gotten to a cruising altitude, and because there's a yoke on both sides, right? Let me do these things. So I get a feel for it as well. Okay. Because what if I'm on one of these things and who knows, pilot has a heart attack, whatever, and somebody's got to bring this damn thing down. right? Or that's my escape method. That's get the hell out of Dodge for whatever reason. Okay, can I operate a boat if there's a boat there? Can I jump on a motorcycle if that's what I? Okay, but again, not only is this the thinking person's, I'm going to use the term martial art, but please note that I don't mean that limited of a description. But it's also not. It is the thinking person's system, but it is not the lazy person's system. Can you imagine, right? Ninja being a kind of an advisor to a general or whatever, and right? Can you help me out with this thing because these guys are coming and whatnot? And yeah, dude, I'm not feeling it right now. Yeah, just gonna go back to my nap. Yeah, well, you won't be waking up from that nap, right? So, anyway, anything else, James? Anything last minute before I wrap this up? Anything you have to throw on top of things? You've been around for, I don't know, a couple of days, a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
A few. How long ago did you get started with me?
Like, I don't remember what we did come up with. Probably at least a few months now.
What a dick. Anyway. But you started martial arts when?
I was probably like 12, 13, I think.
Okay, do the math. Your age minus. I think you got involved with the dojo. Let's see. I was in Sunbury, and I was at the school that we had to give up, right, because of the roofs and stuff, and I had to make a strategic decision about dump all the money into fixing roofs or save the dojo itself. So let's see. Were we already in when you joined?
Already in?
Were we already in that location?
Yes.
And then did you get involved through the first online program, or were we already, you were at the dojo? That's right. You came into the dojo. You traveled to the dojo. Man, holy shit.
That was,
we're looking at
Eric White was still at the dojo at the time.
We're looking at the late 90s, early aughts. Holy shit. Better than 20 years, yeah?
Yeah.
Some people are just sticky boogers. Anyway, I was one. They're getting rid of me. Anyway, okay. So hopefully we'll see folks live for the Daikomyo side's coming up. We do ours at the new year. I think most people know why at this point. And if not, listen to a previous episode. I'm sure it'll pop up. But that's it. We'll wrap this up. And even if I don't see you on Whiteboard Wednesday, I'm going to be focusing on doing this deception and angling kind of stuff. It'll cover a wide range of things, but what I want to do is I want to get to so that our Friday masterclass will actually focus on doing this with swords. Okay? People like that kind of shit. So, okay? Whatever it takes to bait people to class. Sometimes I have to get people to do shit in spite of themselves. Anyway, so yeah, but even if I don't see you during those classes and whatnot, I'll see you next time on KUDEN.
Get more of KUDEN Radio, subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.